when you're not guilty. So literally the ASAP Rocky trial finished up and I was like, I wasn't paying that close attention to it, but I was aware of like he was going through the court process. So now that it's kind of all over, sort of, right? Like he's not guilty. I thought it was so funny that he got cleared. He's not guilty, and I was like, whew, I was sweating bullets for the man. You know what I mean? 20 years. He was facing 20 years. So I thought that it might be cool to talk about like certain people in the court system who get proven not guilty, right? Now, there are cases where it's like justice has really been done. It feels like in this instance, he's not guilty. They couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that, he did do it, or like, you know what I mean? They couldn't say definitively that, yes, he was the culprit. So because of that, he gets to go live a peaceful life. But a lot of other people, like the exonerated five now, it's looking at them and kind of feeling this immense pressure from the court system to like get a conviction. And especially these kids, it feels like, darn, it really is a failure of the system. And any number of other cases, it's hard to like pinpoint it exactly, but that's why we have multiple retrials. They get another chance, they get other chances, and sometimes those are successful, sometimes they're not. But anyways, when you're not guilty, I just feel like there has to be this immense, like this sort of gut feeling of like, I know the truth and I'm not guilty, so you have nothing to worry about, but you're still like shaken up by having to face jail and to face prison, stare it in the face and kind of just say to yourself, like, there is a small, slight possibility that I don't walk away from this. But knowing who you are and yourself, that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here, is that when you're not guilty, you're not guilty. No matter who, no matter the court system, no matter your personal life, your professional life, if you're not guilty, you got nothing to worry about. If you're not in any kind of situation like that, you've got nothing to worry about, And I just feel like as the process of the trial was coming out for him, for ASAP, I was kind of like, they were offering like a plea deal. They were offering deals of like, maybe you serve a little bit of time and then you get out of it, or you have to do this or that, right? Otherwise, you'll be facing this prison sentence. And me being me, I was just kind of thinking to myself, like, I would take the plea deal. Like, that sounds a lot more generous than the 20 years, you know what I'm saying? But when you got nothing to worry about, if you're right, and he was not guilty, so he was willing to face 20 years and basically be at ease knowing that they don't have anything. They're not going to do anything. And I'm going to walk away and still be who I am because I know who I am, right? Like, that's the basic idea. That's the whole point. When you're not guilty, you're not guilty. You got nothing to hide. You got no weight on your shoulders, no guilty conscience, right? It's easy to kind of live in that free sort of life. It's easy to have faith when you don't do the wrong thing. Now, when you get a little bit of dirt on you, that's where it gets a little in the gray area. But in this instance, you could say it was in the gray area, but they didn't have what they needed to really convict him, to get him to really have them say that like he's guilty. And also, I don't know how unbiased. I don't even know if there was a jury selection. Maybe there was. Maybe there was a jury. I may be. I may be like not thinking about them, or I wasn't paying all that much attention to them, I guess. But anyways, if there was a jury selection, I don't know how unbiased they would be towards, celebrities, I guess. But with all the evidence against them, I would imagine that they wouldn't really care, or they shouldn't care, But this is just a good example of like how your celebrity or your famous, being famous kind of works in your favor, but it also has to be like mixed with, it has to be mixed with your truth. The reality of the matter is I didn't fire anything. I intimidated this person. They have me on camera, but it's not really a real gun. So I didn't shoot. I didn't do none of that. So they got nothing on me. They can't say anything about me. So I'm free. I'm not guilty. I didn't do it. And it's cool to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and just yell and be like, I'm not guilty. And then for the jury to say he's not guilty either. Like, that's just a great feeling. It makes me think of 12 Angry Men, where it's just like one juror and a room full of other guys that are just like, yeah, let's make this quick. Let's make this easy, And he has to like convince them all, essentially, hey, he didn't do it. It could have been any number of things. It could have been any number of ideas or moments or the timeline for it to all match up to be what they say it is, but it isn't. It's complicated in that way. And when you're not guilty, you think that you think that everything will just kind of go your way. And sometimes it does, especially if you're just completely clean. But other times when it's like, well, they can get evidence or find evidence or make a case for you doing it, right? It's like Shawshank Redemption, where he is getting framed for his wife's murder, and he's like not being compassionate, or he's not showing the jury that like he couldn't have done it, and then they blame it all on him, and then he goes to prison for life. Like, that's not right, but that's an example of like being not guilty and still ending up guilty or whatever. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? There's also that Anatomy of a Fall that makes me think of it, is that like the mom, spoilers for Anatomy of a Fall, spoilers for Shawshank Redemption, spoilers for, what was the other movie I said? 12 Angry Men. My bad if I spoiled you. But spoilers for Anatomy of a Fall. I also talk about it on this podcast, but when in Anatomy of a Fall, where the mom is like proven not guilty, well, she's told she's not guilty, but we, the audience, don't really know if she didn't do it. But the point of that movie isn't whether she's guilty or not guilty. It's like kind of the whole thing. But my point being is that like, if she got proven not guilty, okay, and there was a sense of tomorrow, there's no dread in the next day. It's like a relief, finally, I don't have to carry this burden of this death anymore. But she was proven not guilty, but there was a case to be made that she was guilty. You know what I'm saying? So it can kind of like, we don't know definitively if she wasn't not guilty, if she was not guilty, but they made another argument against it, and it was kind of like this back and forth. But anyways, when you're not guilty, there also has to be, there's one, having the truth on your side and the reality of like, I didn't do it. And then there's the other side, which is like fighting for yourself. You have to find that balance between, I know what I did, I know I didn't do what they're accusing me of, but I have to create a barrier. So I have to create a barrier, or I have to create a timeline that is so tight, that is so spot on, that it can't possibly be anything more. You know what I'm saying? It can't be any possibility of their case destroying my wall or my barrier or my reality, my truth that we're going to show to the jury, you know? And I often think about how people get convicted, they go away to prison, and then they have to basically figure themselves out. How do you fight for yourself? How do you come back from that? How do you look at the court and be like, you guys made a decision, but it's not right. I didn't do it. Let's go back and let's relook at it. Let's have a retrial. Let's try it again. And let's try a new approach, a new way. And there has to be somebody out there. I don't know the exact name of this person, but I think I did see a story of somebody who went to prison, falsely convicted, and during being in prison, they like studied the law, and I don't know if they became a lawyer or if they were just like studying it, but they became in the legal process so that they could defend themselves and figure it out or prove themselves innocent. And that's a story. Now that is a story if there ever was one written. And I really like those stories. I really like those moments of like, I'm not guilty. I didn't do it. You know, being able to stand up for yourself and know the truth and know that you're right, even when everybody has to push against you and tell you that like, well, you must have done something because otherwise you wouldn't be a part of this or X, Y, or Z. And it's just like, no, I didn't do it. When it comes to the A$AP Rocky trial or the case in particular, it's like, you know, it is a bit of a gray area, especially that video of it. But at the same time, it's kind of like people are allowed to dispute and somebody else, you know, it gets a little bit mushy. It's kind of like he was there and he was caught on camera, like looking like he had a weapon, but it wasn't a weapon, right? Like it's kind of hard to make it exactly what it's supposed to be, you know? They had a dispute, gunshots were fired, and now here we are, however many years after, right? And then it goes, well, I didn't actually fire the gun. Well, we think you did, and we're going to charge you, you know, we're going to hit you with two, we're going to press charges on you, and we're going to take you to court, and then it goes into this whole legal battle, and it becomes about, you were right there, you pulled out a weapon, and you shot at this guy, and he's like, no, I didn't shoot at him, it was a fake gun, it wasn't a real weapon, I don't know what you're talking about, somebody else did it, you can't see them on the camera, so who really did it? It's not me, you guys are getting the wrong guy, and I'm not telling on this other person who did it, it was just some random person, who was it really? And it's just this whole process, it's this whole argument, it's you say one thing, or you're trying to prove that this happened, but it didn't, and it just becomes this whole mess of like, what is the real truth of it all, you know? But I digress. When you're not guilty, you have to fight for yourself. You have to get the right people to help you fight. It's all about creating that team, those people that are like fighting with you and for you and that give you all of their support, you know? And it's just it feels like sometimes it's not always appreciated how hard maybe like some lawyers or people in the justice system work to like push back or defend people who are not guilty. And when they fail, it can kind of feel like the justice system itself has failed, but there are people out there who are really working hard to essentially get that, to preserve, you know, to save, to help, Of course, it's case by case. It's not all one or the other, but it just feels like when you're not guilty and you have somebody who's fighting so hard to prove that you're not guilty, and sometimes they may fall short, or they don't have the right resources, or don't you I think that there has to be like some sort of like a lawyer hierarchy. You know what I'm saying? Like the top of the line lawyers do this. And then, do you know what I'm saying? Like there has to be like a lawyer ranking. How do you know you got like the best of the best lawyer? Because I imagine that not all lawyers are the same. You know, they're humans too. They make mistakes. They miss things. They aren't perfect. And it's just all of that mixed together. It's hard to figure out, like, it's hard to make a for sure statement on the justice system when it's like, it's us people. We're flawed. We make mistakes. We make the wrong choices from time to time. And I don't know, this jury thing, this whole case or whatever, could have gone a completely another way. Did you ever think about that? You think about like the biggest trials in the world, or like the most interesting cases, and you think to yourself like, what if they had gotten a guilty verdict on this person? How different would life be, or how different would people think about this thing? Or what about this? You know? It's always a bit. And vice versa. You can look at it as like, what if this guilty person was chosen to be not guilty? Would they change their life? How different would they really be in their life, you know? It's hard to say. It's difficult. And sometimes thinking about it is really damaging, because imagine you get told you're guilty when you're not guilty, and then you're just in prison thinking about how, I guess, how much different your life would be if you were not guilty, you know? But that label alone is strong enough to like get everybody to rally behind you, basically just comfort you and be like, there we go, you did it, you know, you've proven yourself, and now you have like the golden badge of like the stamp of approval saying you're not guilty, you didn't do this thing, you're free to go, you're back in the world, you know, you're back at it again. And that's the cool part. That's the feeling I want for a lot of people, you know? It kind of feels like we don't have those. Obviously, those are very serious and very strict and very big moments, you know, that could have like long-lasting consequences, such as, you know, going to prison for 20 years. But I wish we all had like kind of like that example of like, or that moment where somebody goes like, hey, you're not guilty. You're a good person. You know what I mean? Like, imagine if we had like a real court of public opinion, or if we had like a real court for every single thing that we've ever done. You know what I mean? Like, oh, you got into an argument with your coworker, or you got into an argument with this person, or you got into an argument with your boyfriend or with your girlfriend, and you kind of had like this dispute, right? Who won? You know what I mean? Like kind of like that court level of it, and they go like, you're not guilty of looking at this girl's butt. You know what I mean? Like, how funny would that be? It's just like, yes, thank you. You know, that's the feeling I'm trying to talk about here, is like that moment that when they finally cleanse you of your status of being this guilty person, of being in the courtroom, of having to be locked up or put away, or have this burden on your shoulder that's basically telling you that like, you could still go away. This isn't over yet. Not until you're given that stamp. And for him, I can't imagine how good that feeling must have been. You know what I mean? He was out there hugging his wife, hugging Rihanna. You know what I'm saying? Being out there and basically just enjoying that moment of, hey, I'm not guilty. You know, and that's top tier feeling. That has to be a top tier feeling, and I wish we all had that in our lives, or we all had like a simple moment of like something like that where we can kind of experience that on a daily basis of, hey, you're accused of stealing your coworker's phone. Are you guilty or not guilty? And it comes out you're not guilty. You're like, see, I told you I didn't steal it. I told you, right? I just wish that feeling came more often than not. But I guess the good feeling is like basically just being at peace, knowing you did good things for other people without having anybody telling you you did the right thing. You know, just you doing what you feel is right. And that's where it can kind of get a bit muddy. But I don't think that there are a lot of people who walk away from being not guilty and not having this overwhelming sense, having this overwhelming feeling of happiness. Like everything gets just so much more exaggerated. Like you're so much more heightened and relieved and excited and really, really happy about where your life is going to go after this, right? There's so much joy in knowing I'm free, I'm liberated, I can walk amongst people and proudly say, not guilty, I'm just a regular guy, you know? I just think that it gives them a new... It definitely shifts something in them, you know? It's like people who get in a car accident, but they miraculously survive, you know? Like that, oh my goodness, there was that plane crash, and I think it was Canada. The plane crashed, and then the plane rolled over on its back, and everybody was managed to get out alive. Like, if that doesn't change your sense of... Like, there has to be a part of you that believes that, like, man, that was a miracle. Like, all of these plane crashes going on, and now we survived. Like, that has to be such a huge blessing, right? It's like in Fight Club, spoilers for Fight Club. It's like he puts the gun to the guy's head and he's like, what do you want to do with your life? And he's like, I want to be a veterinarian. And he's like, if you don't become a veterinarian in like 3 years, I'll come back here and I'll blow your head off. And then he's like, okay, he runs away. And he's like, dude, now when he goes home, his food is never going to taste better than that today. You know what I mean? Like, he has such an appreciation for his life. Like, he could have died, but he got away. He's going to go home and he's going to eat, and it's going to be the greatest meal that he's ever had because he was on the edge of death. He could have died, and now he's like appreciates every breath, every moment, every second that he's able to be alive and go after the things that he wants, you know? And I think that's obviously really dangerous and over-exaggerated, but you get my point, is that being called not guilty, that's such a huge celebration, such a huge moment, such a big relief and a big moment of just saying, I'm free. I'm not going anywhere, you know? I'm going to be a regular civilian again. I'm not a convict. I'm not a prisoner. I'm not any of those things. And you walk away clean. And I think that's cool. I think that's an amazing feeling. And it's something that, I guess if you've never been through it, you can't really imagine it, or you can't really like, man, what is that? You know, people can explain it to you, but until you're in that situation yourself, you'll never really understand it. You know what I'm saying? Same way with that plane crash. Like, I saw the footage of the plane crashing. I saw the people getting out of the plane crash. it doesn't put me in their shoes in the moment of when they landed and then it crashed and then the engines caught on fire and then they flipped over and then they had to get unbuckle their seatbelts and then they had to walk out of there. You know what I'm saying? With this feeling of like, I could have died. You know? You'll never understand that feeling until you go through it yourself. You know? There's so much out there to experience and to feel. Now, is that an experience or a feeling that I want to have? No, I want the plane to land. I want the plane to safely land and we all go to our destination as peacefully, as calmly as we can. That is what I want every single time. I don't want to have to experience a crashing plane that flips on its back and now we have to evacuate. Like, I don't want to experience that. I'm happy just watching or hearing people's experiences of it. But in that particular case, I won't be able to really, understand what they went through, But then there are the more intricate cases. This one was, they had video evidence of it and they had like pretty harsh, in this case, nobody really got hurt, right? There were some shots fired. Nobody really got, as far as I know, nobody really got hit. It was just that they fired the weapon and then that was it, But there are more serious cases of like, obviously of murder, right? That's a big one. And with those cases, it's like, it's always about like personal relationships or how do you know this person or how is it all connected, And I guess with those kind of like cases, it's a little bit more, what's the right word to use? It's like, it's obviously, how does this event take place? How can they line up the dots exactly to say you did it? Like if a woman dies, right? And it's like, you're the husband of this woman, they're more than likely going to suspect the husband rather than just some random burglar coming in. So then it becomes this whole case of like, what was your marriage like? How do you know were you ever violent towards her? Were you this? Were you that? Right? And then it starts to become more of like, less about like the issue. It just becomes this larger human study. Right? That's what most of these cases are. It's just about understanding people's lives and getting the juicy drama a bit, But for the court purposes, to illustrate their point, So if you have like a good story, a nice, clean story, it's easy to go through it. But as we all know, relationships are complicated and they get all muddled. So it's like, nobody ever has like a clean story in the courtroom. It's always like, yeah, we were going through some problems in our marriage, or this happened in our marriage, or she was unhappy and I was unhappy, right? Like, it always feels like there's more dirt, to unpack. And because of that, it will lean the jury one way or the other. But imagine being put in that scenario and then fighting for your life, fighting for what's right, saying that it wasn't me, it was this person. It was like, it wasn't me, it was her brother-in-law or like her brother, you know what I mean, who killed her. And then it becomes like a whole nother story, and then you get not guilty and you're free, I feel like I've just been completely explaining some nonsense, but my point being, when you're not guilty, it's such a sweet feeling. It's such a heavy relief. And oftentimes, I wish there was like a courtroom that was that serious, that was that, sort of tense moment. And then they all of a sudden go, but you're not guilty. And you can walk away with your head high, I don't know. how often do we get to prove ourselves worthy of peace, of love, and of happiness, in front of the whole world, right? Like this trial in particular was being watched because it's obviously ASAP Rocky and Rihanna attached to it, but how often do we get to like prove ourselves to the media and to the public and to the court system and these very serious allegations that came out? How often do we get to stand and defend ourselves and win, and really win? So it's something that I thought about, and I was particularly like, man, what is that moment like of being not guilty, of living without the burden of jail, of prison, and how much more they take life, they make life more precious. They treat life with more care and a lot nicer than they would otherwise, So it's really it's a pretty cool moment, I think. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you guys all next time. Thank you.